Welcome to another Bellows Blades review, and you may be thinking, are we going to be reviewing the Paramilitary 2 today? As that's what we have sitting out on the table. And the answer is no, we're not. We're going to be reviewing something that looks very similar to the Paramilitary 2. So the issue that you run into when it comes to knives like Spyderco's and Benchmade's and some of the moderately, higher end knives that are out there, of course, not looking at like the custom made or the real high end stuff that's, hundreds and hundreds of dollars, but talking about the like $300 range and less. The issue that you run into is a lot of people would love to have those knives, but they either can't afford a knife that's $200 or they're just not willing to spend $200 on a knife, which is understandable. I don't have too many of them myself. It's a lot of money to put out for a knife. So the question is there something like the Paramilitary 2 that is out there that does not cost, $150, $200, $220, depending on what steel you have in it, doesn't cost in that, close to $200 range? And the answer is yes, there are things out there. Now, there's maybe a little bit more of an ethical question on whether or not you want to spend the money on them. But that's a different conversation. For right now, I just want to review what is out there. So this is the knife that we're basically comparing to, but the knife that we're reviewing today is from a brand that appears to be very well known for basically ripping off other well-known designs. Chinese-made brand, they basically just take a design that another knife maker has made that's popular, and they more or less directly copy it. There's really no beating around the bush on that one. It is what it is. So I find it interesting. Of course, the name itself is a little ridiculous. Ganzo, I thought that was a Muppet, but apparently it is also a brand of knife. So you're looking at, brand name Ganzo, but I just love their little slogan here. Ganzo Tools, nothing is impossible, except apparently coming up with your own design. That for them appears to be impossible because, like I said, the majority of their knives appear to be just flat out rip-offs of other designs. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this and compare it a little bit to the Paramilitary 2. So it does come with a little pouch, if you will. There's a little warranty card in there, a 12-month warranty, and this is the knife itself. So you're going to see here, as far as the handle shape and blade shape, this knife is a direct rip-off or a clone of the Paramilitary 2. You can put them over top of each other, and they're almost exactly the same shape. In fact, the handles, the scales would almost be interchangeable if it wasn't for the one change that Ganzo did make, which is going with the axis lock, or axis style lock, over the compression lock. So one of the things I've noticed is that Benchmade kind of made this style lock known, but here recently, other brands, even outside of Chinese brands that'll just rip it off regardless of patent, other even well-known brands have started using this lock bar style, axis lock style lock. So Ganzo decided to put that on there, which of course shifts some of the other stuff around, including the fact that, of course, it does not have the four-way reversible pocket clip. It does only have the two-way reversible. Speaking of the pocket clip, you can see because of that, it comes on the other end. So you've got your tip-up carry on this one, but you can switch it left or right hand. The pocket clip pretty much almost exactly mirrors the Spyderco, just without the logo on it. The blade shape, like I mentioned, is the same. Of course, this particular model has the CPM S110V. This thing supposedly has 440C. Basically, all Chinese-made knives, it seems like they like to use 440C, or at least claim that they're using 440C. 440C is a decent, usable steel. It's not great by any means, but it's decent. You can use it, and you can use it fairly hard. You don't have to worry about it too much. You're just going to have to sharpen it a little more often, touch it up quite a bit if you're using it, compared to some of these other super steels that are out here now. When I was growing up, 440C was kind of like the steel that any decent knife had. Of course, times have changed, and we've come out with a whole lot of other super steels out there now that have basically pushed 440C down to the bottom of the list. So this knife does have a 3.5-inch blade. Again, claims to be 440C. You can actually see that there. It's got the model number and the 440C. So the model number on this one is the G729, which is basically, like I said, that's their model that rips off the paramilitary too. Now, the handle claims to be G10. When you're feeling the difference between them, I don't know. It probably is G10. It is possible that it could just be plastic as well. But it has a decent feel to it. A mildly aggressive texture, nothing too crazy that's going to tear up your pocket, but gives you a little bit of grip in case the handle gets wet. The one thing that I do notice here is actually the blade is slightly longer on the... it looks like it's just slightly longer on the Ganzo compared to the Spyderco. So I know the Spyderco, I believe this, if I remember right, does have a 3.4-inch blade. This claims to have a 3.5-inch, which would make sense why there seems to be a little bit of a difference there. And yes, 3.5 inches is pretty much exactly right on this blade. So blade's just slightly longer than the Spyderco. Of course, one of the things I don't expect, and is clearly the case, you're not going to have as smooth of an action on this knife. Part of that has to do with just the fact that it's this axis lock. So when you're opening it, it's putting tension on that blade, and that blade's kind of overcoming that spring tension. So as the spring wears in, that may get a little bit better. You can still spidey flick it, but it takes a little more effort. It's definitely not like this knife where you've just got extremely, extremely smooth action on the Spyderco. Of course, this thing is built to a much higher quality level. And the other thing, I have to point it out. If you can't afford to save up, obviously get the paramilitary too. It's a much better knife in every aspect. It's got better build quality. It's got better materials. It's got better steel. It is built in the U.S., Golden, Colorado, so you're supporting American-made jobs. So in every way, shape, or form, I would definitely recommend getting that paramilitary too. However, there's a couple cases where this might make sense. So if you're somebody who just absolutely can't afford or won't afford to spend $200 on a knife, but you like the blade shape and design, handle ergonomics of the paramilitary too, this is an option that gives you all of that same stuff, just with cheaper blade steel and not nearly as good a build quality. Now, this is a $20 knife. This is a $200 knife. So this costs 1/10 of what the Spyderco does. Build quality wise, you're definitely getting good build quality. Everything seems very solid on this. I don't see any tooling marks. I don't see anything loose. I don't see anything that's, not flush where it should be. Everything seems right and tight on it. But it just doesn't give you the same feeling in the hand that you're going to get with the Spyderco. Of course, it's subjective whether or not you think that this knife is worth 10 times this knife. Obviously, like I said, better still and all that, but is it really worth 10 times? I don't know. So that might be one case, or like in my case, obviously I got it because I wanted to review it because I know other people are buying it. I prefer not to give my money to Chinese companies. However, there are some that make decent knives like We Knives or Civivi, stuff like that, that aren't directly ripping off other designs. They're not ripping off Spyderco's or Benchmade's designs, or even, I know Ganzo makes a Ontario Rat 1 ripoff, which is weird to me because the Rat 1, you can usually pick it up if you're looking around on sale. You can pick it up for about $25, maybe $30. So why would I spend $20 on a ripoff when I could just get the real thing for $10 more? It doesn't make sense. But they do make one. Unless you just really like having the Axis style lock on the Rat 1, maybe that makes sense for you. But the other time though, so maybe you get this because you can't afford or won't afford the Spyderco. That to me is a little more iffy. I really hate to support them ripping off other people's designs and giving them money that way. But the one way that does kind of make sense to me is what this will end up being my use for this knife is I did spend the money for the Spyderco, right? I bought this and I use this and I love this knife. It's one of my favorite knives, honestly. But if I'm really just going to go out and do something where I know I'm going to be abusing a knife, especially with this S110V, which is a little more brittle, you've got extremely thin, fine grind, you've got a very fine point. This is not a knife I want to abuse, right? Especially for what I paid for it. I use it, but I don't like to abuse it. So maybe if I still like that design and the ergonomics and that thin grind, I mean, you look at this thing actually, if anything, maybe is a little thinner than the Spyderco. Comes to an even thinner and finer point. So this would be great in that capacity, knowing that I only spent $20 on it. So if I abuse it and something breaks or that tip snaps or something like that, I'm not going to feel nearly as bad about it as the Spyderco. And I don't feel quite as bad about buying it because Spyderco did get the money from me for the original thing. Maybe I'm trying to justify a little bit. I still don't really like the idea of supporting companies that rip off other people's designs. This is actually the first clone, no, second clone that I've ever bought. So I did buy a Sebenza clone as well a couple years back. And then, of course, now this one. So in the last few years, this is my second clone that I've bought. I tend to stay away from them. Like I said, I don't like to support that practice. But I know there's a lot of people out there that have no qualms about that. They're going to buy what they can afford and what they like. And you know what? I can't fault them for that. I understand that. And I'm not going to, I'm not going to judge someone else for that. I just try not to make it a common practice of mine. So that being said, though, what are my thoughts of this knife overall? You know what? For 20 bucks, the build quality is spot on. It still feels good in the hand. The ergonomics are the same as the Spyderco. You've got jimping on the spine here, same as the Spyderco, except this is a lot less aggressive. The Spyderco has very sharp jimping. This is not quite that. You kind of have a teardrop shaped hole. I prefer the round hole, especially when you're trying to do the Spidey flick. Your finger just fits better in the round hole, but you can do it with this, so that's fine. The 440C steel, I mean, I'll have to wait till I get to use it a little bit to tell you how good that is or isn't. Chinese steel's all over the place. Heat treatments all over the place. This could be super soft. It could be too hard and brittle. It could be just fine. Until I get to using it, it's hard to tell. Assuming that it's at least decent quality on the steel and it's not super soft or super brittle, which is more likely to be super soft. If it's not either of those things, then for $20, I mean, I think this thing is a very good deal. It feels like it has great quality, looks like it has great build quality. It's not super heavy or clunky. Like I said, the only thing is it's a little tight on the opening and closing, but that may wear in, and maybe even putting a couple drops of oil in there. It does not have ball bearing action, but neither does the Spyderco. I'm assuming this thing looks like it just has washers in there. I don't know, guys. You got the lanyard hole, same as the Spyderco, except the Spyderco's got, kind of the metal barrel style lanyard, and this literally just has a hole drilled through the liners, and the G10 does have the stainless steel liners in it, kind of the column design, open back design, which is similar to the Spyderco. Yeah, overall, as far as clones go, I mean, it seems to be a decent clone. We'll have to see once I get to actually using it. But overall, I really don't have anything bad to say about it other than I don't like the fact that they blatantly ripped off Spyderco's design. So you guys sound off in the comments. Let me know, would you buy a clone like this? What do you think about that? Would you carry something like this? Or do you have any experience with Ganzo knives? Have you bought any of their other models, and can you give me any feedback on them? Because this is my first model that I bought. Maybe my last model that I buy. I don't know. Like I said, I just always feel a little bit icky buying these knives when they're direct rip-offs like that. But I do like to put the reviews out there. And I like to hear back from you guys and find out what the rest of the community thinks. So sound off in the comments. Let me know. If you enjoy my videos at all, please like and subscribe. And I appreciate that. And we'll catch you next time.